Hi everyone and welcome to my RAKE Spiritborn guide. This is a build I've been playing quite a lot lately on stream. A lot of people have been asking me about this build and I gotta say it is super fun, very great farming build, and it looks amazing. You see this insanely large cleave that you get here. This is the Spiritborn's RAKE core skill amplified by the Rod of Capileke. This is a very similar build to some of the other core skill builds that you might have already seen, like the Quill Volley or Crushing Hand. We use the Capileke and the Midnight Sun combo to get our resources back, and like this we constantly jump from full to 0 resources and back, as you can see on my resource bar right now. Like this you get a massive damage multiplier and you get this larger increased radius here for your rake. This seems slightly unintended because usually it casts at just the maximum size, as if you had 100% extra size tempers, for example for Crushing Hand or other core skills that Capileke amplifies. For some reason it is massive with rake, so I believe that this is probably going to get adjusted at some point. But for now, this is how it works and I had an absolute blast with this. And the setup here, it also has a few interesting details that I want to share with you. All in all, I've been using this build quite a lot in order to farm Paragons, farm Nightmare Dungeons. It's a very fast build because of this massive AoE. Health tides also is very good. It is somewhat on a level of Crushing Hand when it comes to just blasting through content really quickly. And Crushing Hand, in my opinion, is the fastest for that purpose. So it gets pretty close to that, and it's like an alternative to Crushing Hand. It doesn't really push as high because Rake itself doesn't have like crazy amounts of damage, but if you really try and go all in with like all of the bugs that the Spiritborn has right now, you could probably get pretty close to 150. Personally, I have not done that, but it's a similar combo as the other core skills as I explained, so you can also abuse the bugs similarly. Just the base value of the skill is lower than on other skills. But I didn't really have any issue going up to like even tier 110 or so with this. I cleared like 110 in like 3 minutes, 4 minutes or so. I didn't really go much beyond that because I was mostly farming a bit. In any case though, here's my planner. This is a few different setups here that you can go over. So I've been mostly using this farm plus shroud setup here towards the end once I enabled the Shroud of Flawless Death, the mythic item that was introduced lately. Or enabled again rather, and this has actually been a pretty nice upgrade here. So as I mentioned, we have the Rod of Capileke and the Midnight Sun. The most important thing about this is that you want to reach a point where this Midnight Sun ring refreshes all of your resources at once. Usually it does 50% of your resource bar if you have a good roll, and then you need to get 100% extra resource generation from various sources in order to reach a full energy restore. So how do you do that? Well, you have, first of all, Yen's Blessing that comes with some resource generation. Then we have the Vigorous Passive, this is up here. You can also invest more points into this passive to kind of like fine-tune your resource generation in case you don't have a good ring, for example. So this is one important thing. We get a lot of intelligence. So in this case, we actually get 23% here from intelligence. And then there's also Paragon nodes here on the sapping board. So these are very important. There's resource generation, 8%. 2%, 2%, and so on. And lastly, we have the Ravager that gives us another 30. So if all of these combined reach 100% bonus after multiplying with each other, they don't just add up, they actually multiply. So just to like reiterate this real quick, in case you might have forgotten this or maybe you don't see it, the Ravager would, for example, be a times 1.3. This 30% bonus is a 1.3. And then, for example, we have the 17% on the boots. This will be a times 1.17 or. And like this, they multiply up. And then if you like add everything, including the Paragon nodes, then this would look something like this here together with the intelligence. And this number here needs to reach 2 or more, depending on how bad your Midnight Sun roll is. But if you have a 50% roll, then you're going for the 2 after multiplying all of these numbers, basically. So this is how you do this, and like this you always get the Capileke effect, you always get this massive swipe. It's very obvious to see if this combo is not working, then the swipe will be much smaller and then you have to fix it with more resource generation. So as I mentioned, small fixes are vigorous, you can invest more points, or you can also temper resource generation. So this is another alternative. For example, when you don't have the boots or when you have a bad ring, you can temper resource generation to help with that. For the rest of the setup, we have redirected force aspect. This gives us lots of crit damage since you always guaranteed crit here from the Capileke. This is very powerful. We combine this with interdiction. Right now, you can actually go beyond 100% block chance. So you also try to get a lot of resolve stacks for this aspect here. And like this, you get like 300, 400% block chance or so, and redirection scales to the moon. So this gives you lots of crit damage. Then we have the Wild Claws aspect. This is a Rake specific aspect. I really like playing with this because it gives you a lot of cooldown recovery. So the way this works is that this rake that comes from the Wild Claws is actually imitating a second cast. So it can apply all of the effects twice. Every time you press rake, you get this other swipe. Now the thing is that Wild Claws currently is actually bugged and doesn't actually deal any damage, like very little. So it does 65% damage is not true. It doesn't benefit from one of the damage modifiers, but just getting the second swipe has a bunch of different positive effects here. The first effect here is that the primary Jaguar Hull actually contributes a lot of your overall damage. So usually try to hit them 15 times with your rake and your Ravager combined, and then this second swipe from the Wild Claws in order to proc Jaguar Hull, and then this kind of just like explodes elites and the boss. So this does a lot of your damage because of some double dipping going on right now with the Jaguar Hull. Plus we amplify the Jaguar Hull from the Loyalties Mantle. So it overall has a lot of value in this setup. So Wild Claws helps with that by giving us more of those procs, even if Wild Claws does not actually really do any damage on its own. It's just more hits. And the other thing that it does is that, for example, you get more procs of cooldown reduction like Prodigy's Tempo. So usually you have to attack 3 times in a row with Prodigy's Tempo in order to get the cooldown reduction effect. But with Wild Claws it's only 2, because you swipe twice, you actually get 4 hits and they all count for Prodigy's Tempo. And in fact, after doing a third cast, you will have 6 swipes and you actually get a second Prodigy's Tempo. So it actually procs all the time. It's a crazy amount of cooldown reduction. You can press all of your cooldowns like every 2 seconds or so. You can literally face roll all of your cooldowns. So this is why I really like Wild Claws aspect, which is technically not the best option here in terms of DPS thanks to the bug. But if that bug is fixed, then this is a really strong option. Plus it gives you all these other perks. And there's like more stuff, like more like hits, for example the vulnerable effect here on the ring, and these kind of little things as well. And the third aspect that we have here is Moonrise. Moonrise is very powerful because Pepeleke makes our skill also a basic skill. So we get a massive damage multi, we get movement speed, we get attack speed. It's just really good. You can also play this whole build with either overpower or armor stacking, similar to how I've, for example, done it in some other Spiritborn builds. So we have this here. If you go overpower, you can do Banish Lord's Talisman, and then you can replace, for example, Wild Claws aspect. So you do give up this quality of life and the cooldown and so on, and you can do this. Or similarly, you can do unyielding hits and go armor stacking. So those are the 2 options, and they will probably yield a bit more DPS later on. But since basically all of the Torment 4 content is completely trivial for Spiritborn right now, I went for the all-in cooldown reduction Wild Claws combo and just feels so much more smooth. Now a note about the Loyalties Mantle. We have a Jaguar core skill and double Jaguar Hull in order to profit the most from this item. And I actually made a video about this recently talking about resource cost reduction. What you need to know about resource cost reduction is that it is actually a damage multiplier for the role of Pepeleke. So the more resource cost reduction you have, the more you scale up your DPS. And the Loyalties Mantle with a 60% roll basically gives you 2.5 times the amount of resources that Pepeleke can consume. So it's actually a 2.5 times damage multiplier if you combine the Jaguar core skill, Loyalties Mantle, and the 2 Jaguar Hull choices. So this is a very powerful combo, and this was actually the spark that made me create this build in the first place. After I learned about this resource cost effect, I really wanted to do this because you have like the perfect combo here with the core skill plus the 2 Jaguar combos. So Loyalties Mantle, you want to get a really good roll on the resource cost reduction. Also the cooldown reduction might help you slightly with, you know, keeping your hunter up or something. It also makes it so that you just don't have any resource issues at all. You don't even need like any resource recovery. You get it from the sapping board, and you know, the resource recovery is very easy basically if you ever run out, but usually you'll find anyway with the Pepeleke. So overall you just have so much damage from your Jaguar Hull procs and the rake scaling up from Loyalties Mantle that it feels really good. As a mythic, I also put in the Shroud of False Death. This is optional. It is actually not like super crazy value on this build, but it's still good enough to be included in my book. Otherwise, you can also just put like, for example, duelist chest here with like, you know, more armor life or whatever resource stacks. You can get a lot of extra damage here from the Furnace passive, for example, when you have more ferocity stacks from the duelist passive. So this is fine. I like the Shroud though, because the +1 to all passives just kind of feels good. Gives you also like more life, more resources, and so on. So it just feels very nice. And some other important notes. We have our rune setup here. We have the POC Q combo. This is a pretty typical combo for Spiritborn right now. Spend resources, gain Bulwark. Since you spend 100% of your resources on every attack, you proc this every 3 attacks, so roughly once a second or so on like higher end setups. You get a Bulwark, it lasts 3 seconds, and you really want to make sure that you have a barrier, because Viscous Shield right now is a pretty massive damage multi. It has a bug that gives you way more than it should, and this means that when your barriers are down or you don't have this combo and your Bulwark, doesn't activate enough or something, you will not do a lot of damage. So make sure you have this combo, make sure you activate your Capeleke every attack, and then get a massive bonus here. And our second rune word is Soul Jar. So invoke a skill from another class, which means every time we proc Bulwark, and then we get a teleport. So this is purely optional for speed farming. I really like the teleport as an option here. Every few seconds I can do like a teleport with my evade. Feels very nice and smooth. But for example, in the higher tiers, you would replace this with mostly the Exile rune here, the plus 20% life. You can also go Warcry and so on. There's a few other options, but Exile is very nice. It makes you more tanky and also scales up your damage in various ways right now. Because of the Bulwark and the Viscous Shield, you also want to stack a bunch of barrier generation. So we have this here with Amethysts, for example. You also can temper this here on our utility slots. So on the glove. Here I have freeze chance. You can also put more barrier generation if you want. It doesn't matter too much. And you also get some from the Paragon. So for example, Viscous Shield itself has 30% barrier generation. You really want to pick that up. And then together with the Amethyst and also the Auspicious passive, we have enough barrier to have 100% barrier nearly all the time. And like this, you get a massive bonus on the Viscous Shield. Most of the other stuff in this build is just generic damage increases or toughness increases. So of course we have RAKE ranks, we also have basic ranks here because of Capeleke, it makes it a basic skill. And we have res here. Yen's Blessing is mostly used for the resistances, not really so much for anything else, but this kind of like solves your resistances. If you have a GA, especially on the all res, it's very easy. And then you can put like skulls everywhere and solve your armor this way, for example. Alternatively, you can also, for example, put diamonds here and get like a res roll somewhere and then maybe like an armor roll on the neck. And then you could free up your boot slot. So like this, you can bring back Duelist, for example. So there's some options like that, but I kind of like this. It's very comfy. And here on the Paragons, we have the 4 different boards. Here go Conversions, gives us a 30% damage multi. All you have to do for that is stack the Wildfire Glyph a little bit. This fire damage will then buff the Convergence board and give you this damage multi. Viscous Shield, as I explained, with Bulwark. Sapping gives you the extra damage buff when you attack, and also whenever you should run out of resources, you can get it back pretty easily. Plus there's a bunch of resource nodes here that are pretty powerful. We, for example, have also the Hubris Glyph, not because we do a lot of Thorns damage, but because it busts the magic nodes here and gives us the Vuln damage. You can get a lot of extra resources here that helps us with stacking the damage for Capeleke. And then lastly, we have the Revealing here with extra damage against CC'd enemies and a chance to knock down, which just makes it very safe. And we have the Colossal Glyph. And you might be wondering, why is the Colossal Glyph here? We don't use a Gorilla skill. Well, it's mostly for the secondary effect. This gives you extra damage per resolve stack. So here we can have 13 resolve stacks. We can have more resolve stacks here. But even if we don't have a lot of resolve stacks, it's actually a pretty valuable glyph. The primary effect is not helping us, but the secondary and the legendary effect are. So this is why it's included here. And the other 2 glyphs are mostly just to stack up more damage. We have Fitness here that also gives us sometimes some resources if we need. And we also have the Spirit glyph here for extra crit synergies. As for the skill tree, it looks like this. We don't care about the basic skills, but we go all in on RAKE. We have the extra cooldown reduction here. So we have even more cooldown reduction with advantageous RAKE here. We go for the extra damage and lots of damage passives all throughout the tree basically. I have a 1-point sword. This is pretty optional. You can do other stuff there like a vortex if you want. So this is kind of irrelevant. We have a bunch more damage passives here. The Ravager is very important. You need the 30% vigor generation. Plus it also dashes you to the targets all the time, which is nice. You have an Armored Hide. You just try to keep that up all the time. Very easy to do with the Prodigy's Tempo. You just reset it in 2 seconds. So just press it whenever you can. You also have counterattack here. This is on the skill tree because we have the Midnight Sun Ring. This gives you the passive effect all the time. You don't need to have it on the bar. And we also don't really want to press it even if we had it on the bar. So we just invest those 3 points. We get a bunch of extra crit damage and a bunch of extra dodge. And the reason why we don't want to press this is because we actually don't want to dodge very much. We mostly want to block thanks to the redirected force aspect. So we have a lot of block chance and you want to try to get a block once every 10 seconds. So especially on a boss, for example, like let them hit you so that you get this bonus. Then we have Scourge here. This is also relatively optional, especially for farming. I don't even run with this most of the time, but it's nice, especially on the higher tiers. You can get extra damage and you can also get some healing in case they ever get through your barriers. We got Resilient. We activate this with Armored Hide. The Jaguar passives, they're very powerful. And then lastly, we have this ultimate class here. We go for resolution, spiritual attunement, and supremacy. You want to try to use your hunter very often, every few seconds. You can also jump into packs with this. It's basically a teleport. And even on the boss, you want to activate it all the time whenever it's ready, basically, because it gives you these extra strikes, gives you this extra bonus here, gives you this extra bonus there. Does a lot of extra damage for you. And that also concludes this guide here. So we have a RAKE guide currently on max roll, which is built for the Thorns version of this. A lot of people asking me about it. And this is being reworked by Chronix right now. So this RAKE Thorns is going to become basically what you just saw, plus minus, and then the Thorns version is going to remain like a variant down here most likely. So this is kind of what we're planning to do, and you can expect that very soon. But right now the Maxwell guide is not actually built for the RAKE, it's built for Thorns. So it's a very different setup, and you can expect a rework quite soon after making this video. So in that case, I wish you good luck with your Spiritborn. I had a ton of fun with RAKE. Hope you liked this as well. And well, let's see what else we can cook up here. I have been working on a lot of stuff. There's a few more videos I want to make for the class. Otherwise, I've also been working on Rogue lately, which has been very fun. So stay tuned for that. Hope you like this, and see you guys next time.